But more importantly, I've managed to get a cracking guest on tonight, someone that I looked up to and was one of my heroes watching Hibs at Easter Road. There's a few other clubs that he represented as well, which we'll get on to. But tonight we've got Ivan Sproule. Ivan, firstly, thanks very much for coming on my podcast.
No, not at all, not at all.
So we'll just go.
You don't do too many all the same.
I know, I feel lucky. Don't worry, Ivan. So we'll just go right back to the start, Ivan. You grew up in a small village just outside Castleberg. What was life like growing up, and when did you first fall in love with football?
As I say, it's a wee small village in Northern Ireland, and it's a footballing town. First, my love for football obviously came through my dad and my big brother. We're a footballing family, so the ball was out early doors as a young boy, and my dad was a footballer over here in Northern Ireland, and my brother as well. So I suppose the tradition in the family was you're the next one to do it, or you're the next one to do it. So no, the wee local team, Dergview Football Club, who's actually the team I manage now. They're a championship club and the Irish League, but years ago they were just a junior club. So I spent most of my junior years playing with them, and again working my way through the ranks there. And it's one of those things when you're from this area, you represent the area, and I was lucky to do that as a young boy, and then make my way then through the Irish League ranks right up to the Irish League, and I suppose the next step then was Hibs. But no, Castleberg is an area that means an awful lot to me, and even when I went on to represent my country and play for Hibs and play for Bristol City, the wee village, we're extremely proud. And if you come back here and go into the bars and stuff, you see a lot of Hibs shirts not hanging, or Northern Ireland shirts hanging in bars, and that just goes to show at that time how proud they were of me. And listen, everybody knows about the troubles that Northern Ireland had years ago, and we were right in the border ourselves, and a lot of people around here had a lot of hurt, and there was a lot of doom and gloom stories years ago. So I think I was probably more of a story of hope for youngsters, and something that they could focus on. And listen, for me, I probably didn't realise what I was doing when I was away, but every time you come home at summer, or you got a weekend off and you get to come back home from Edinburgh at that time, people were, I suppose because you were on TV, and I didn't realise it, but you were starting to become a bit of a hero to these youngsters. And for me, what it was then, I had to live up to that, and conduct myself in the right way, and try and do the best I could for the area. And I'd like to think at the end of my career I did that.
So you started off at Dunbreen Colts and Dergview, as you said. See, around that time at youth level, did you see young kids getting an opportunity at that time to go to England and to Scotland?
Not really at the younger ages. Even for me to get up to play for the national team in Northern Ireland, I'm from, as you mentioned, Castleberg, a small village. So Belfast is what we class as the big smoke, and we're in the sticks. So none of the boys from around my area really got anywhere near the national youth trials or anything like that. And for kids to get across the water was, you never really heard tell of it, really. There wasn't as many scouts in that. So it was one of those ones, the avenue was to probably try and make it to the Irish League and then try and step on from that. But things have progressed in recent years. Now kids are going to cross all the time, but in my time, it probably wasn't the case. I think the first time I come to attention and in a trial was Wimbledon. Were in the Premier League, the crazy gang back then, and I was arranged to go over for a trial with them, and the story goes I went and signed. Nobody to advise me. I went and signed by an Irish League club over here, Portadown, and I think that stumbled it, and I never got across. And again, I just knuckled myself down and continued to play in the Irish League, and it was one of those things that you just had to keep believing that your chance would come sometime. But again, everybody knows mine didn't come to later on down the line.
So you said your dad was a footballer, Ivan. How was he, when you were playing at youth level? Was he quite hard on you, or did he just let you go and play? Did he offer you advice after games?
No, as I say, unfortunately for me, the story goes with me. As I say, my dad and my brother were both my heroes growing up when you were a young boy. When I was, was around 11 and 12, my dad ended up passing away, sadly. And same thing with my brother. My brother, was tragically killed in a car accident. My brother was 18 years of age and playing in the Irish League, and they just won the Budweiser Cup over here. And that kind of set I think my brother died one year, and then my dad died the next, and it left a big hole and a big void in me. But I was quite lucky. I had a strong mum, and back to your question about my dad and me at the early years when I used to play youth football, he just wanted me to enjoy it. He always was I seen how proud he was the night that my brother won the Budweiser Cup, and I remember I was only kid on the bus, and they were all going on the bus, and there was a few beers going, and Oma Town had beat the mighty Linfield, and my brother was on the bench, and I can remember coming home that night, and my dad's smile was, it said it all, and that was the night that I decided, well, I'm gonna do something great, you know what I mean? And then, of course, I would have loved to have been the one then that my dad was able to see it, and my brothers did, but unfortunately they were took away from me. But somewhere inside me, burning deep, when they passed away, I always promised myself that I'd make them proud someday, and I was very lucky because, as I mentioned, my mum and my sisters and family were close knit, and the wee area of Castle go back to it. I nearly inherited so many people that took care of me, men that would have been friends of my dad, friends of my brother, and I was lucky in that way. But I also had to do a bit of it myself, and I had to believe in myself. And out of that darkness and out of that depth, I think I become quite strong and become quite independent from a very young age. And sometimes it's weird to say this, but maybe what happened to them at that time put the spark inside me to go and achieve something great. And as I said, they were two football men, and I'm just, I look back now, and what I think now is I've made the two of them proud, and I just wish at times, when we lifted the cup, or there's some of them great moments that we had with Hibs or Bristol City or whoever it was, they could have seen it. But here, listen, it's not to be, and that's life. But again, I would like to think that they were extremely proud of me and the years that I got across the water.
So you ended up going to Moyola Park under a certain Kenny Shields. How was he as a manager? Obviously, people in Scotland will know who Kenny Shields is now. Obviously, he's managed in Scotland. But how was he back then, Ivan?
Kenny's he's a top man. Kenny was a real football man, and for me, Kenny, Kenny's from Ballymena, which is a good distance away from me, but the word got round about me, and Kenny rung, and I think he was a Korean at the start, and I remember going down there, and then he took over this B division club, and Kenny got me in, and I used to travel. I think me and another lad, Ross Murray was his name. We used to travel down there every Saturday with his dad. Used to take us down, and Ross drove as well. And I think it used to take us an hour and a bit to get there, and we loved it. And as I say, that's where we start. That was the start of the jump from Derby at with your class junior level to the stepping stone Irish League. And again, I went in there and excelled, and no, Kenny helped me on my way, and again, still a good friend to this day. And then of course I didn't realise later on down the line that Dean would have been the one when I first went to Hibs. It was at Hibs, and Kenny was one of the first ones to ring me when I got across to tell me that that Dean was there. So no, Kenny, a real football man back here, and he's actually running the Northern Ireland ladies team at the minute. And doing a great job there, but a great football man and another man that helped me on my way.
You mentioned that you were a young kid that got into playing with older guys. How did you find that? Was it quite a tough schooling? Were they quite hard on you, and was there no prisoners round about that time?
Well, if anybody watched me probably later on in my career, I was always the smallest one probably in the park, but I probably always had my chair. I think there's a picture goes up at Bobo Ball. He was standing at Celtic, and I'm on my tiptoes, and I think Paul Telford pulled me back, and I had no fear. But I was probably rightly what you mentioned there. I was put into the Irish League, and I was playing men's football when I was probably 10 stone wet. So yeah, because probably I was blessed with pace that could get me away from people. But I learned how to take knocks. I learned that older players will the old saying goes, put the running out of them, and they'll try and catch you early on. Slow you down. Hit you a kick, scare you, or whatever. So that schooling probably helped me. And as I look back on my career now, that's probably the way that I played my game. On the edge and able to mix it with some of the stronger, bigger players. But rightly, as you mentioned, probably playing senior football at an early age helped me with that.
But the tough schooling, playing with older guys and some of the older pros that were around about that time.
As I say, that was my schooling in the Irish League, and back home here from the ages of 15, 16, I was playing senior football, and I probably wasn't the biggest built boy, but I suppose I was brave, and I was game, and I was fast, so I was able to adapt pretty quickly. And I think you mentioned earlier on in the interview that was probably one of the things that made me adapt to professional football so quick, because I had that strength about me even for such a slight boy, as everybody used to call me. But no, listen, it was my schooling. It was something that I do believe, even not getting that coaching from an early age, which probably sometimes you felt better about that you didn't get across the water at an early age. But in the meantime, I think that it made me go on and excel from junior football right up the ladder to one step away from the Premier League in England with Bristol City. And as I said, playing at the very top of the game in Scotland, and what I would suggest was a very good area for Scottish football. Strong Hearts, Celtic, Rangers. There was a lot of strong teams back then, and being able to, as I say, do really well there.
So you ended up eventually going to Oma Town, who were quite a big club, especially around your area. I mean, how was that time for you, Ivan?
Again, I was playing with Derryview at the time, and I was actually my brother's tested. Because my brother passed away early in his life. Derryview and Oma Town, I always had an attachment to them because of my brother, and we played the testimonial, one year, and in the game, of course, I played for Derby against Oma Town and done quite well. And the next thing I think I played the game on the Saturday, and the manager landed down at my house on the Sunday. So I ended up signing for Oma Town, and that was my first step on the Premiership football over here in the Irish League. And I kind of just, it shot from there, and I really enjoyed it. And, around here it was the big thing because they were the Premiership club, and, over here that you don't get the exposure of you would get in England and Scotland, but the results and the goals were in the TV on a Saturday, and you kind of almost felt like you were a proper football then back home. And then I loved it, and again, because I had an attachment with it, because it was a local club, and my big brother played there and won something with them. The fans, not everybody. It was a good place for me to play my football, and again, really enjoyed it. And unfortunately for Oma Town, it was a club that probably was run poorly, and I ended up leaving there to join Institute, because probably the thing was running itself down a wee bit, and the team wasn't great, things off the park wasn't great. It was sad to see now they don't exist even anymore. They didn't even get a team anymore, which for the Irish League's very, very sad. But for me, it was just nice to play for them at that time. And listen, it's one of those things. Again, mention it was a stepping stone in my career.
So you said that you ended up moving to Institute. You weren't there very long because you got a phone call. I mean, I've read the story about how it came about. It's quite incredible, Ivan. But I'll let you tell it for us.
Well, listen, probably the first of that story, I wouldn't have probably got that move on if I could have. One of my friends at Institute at that time was Marty McCann, and the story goes that there was a Frenchman took over Institute, and he had all different philosophies. We were out the facilities in the Irish League are not great. Back then it wasn't, and we were skipping in the dark. He had us out skipping in the dark, and me and Marty was a laid back lad, if you could understand what I mean, and I couldn't skip. So this Frenchman, I could just hear this French voice, and it was. He thought we were messing about, and I just said, I can't skip, I just can't do it. And as you know, I've probably got a bit of a temper, so he had a temper, this Frenchman, and I did. So skipping rope went flying. I says, that's it, I'm out of here. Away I went, jumped in the car. But we were playing the Irish Cup on the Saturday, so he dropped me and stuff, and it was a big thing at that time, because obviously I was a big player for Institute, and I think I was going to get sold at that time then to Linfield or today. And I was about to sign for Derry City then, which they were a League of Ireland club and a big club. So that was going to happen. And the next thing, I was still engineering, and I was lifting steel off the lorry at work, and this phone call came. Said, "Listen, I'm an agent, and with what Tony Mowbray has watched the DVD or highlights, clips of you. Hibernian Football Club want to invite you over for the weekend or for the week's trial." So I did think somebody was pulling my leg, and I sat in the fork, and I was thinking, is this real? Is it not real, or whatever? So I rung someone to make sure that it was real. And the next thing, the person rung me back. He said, "Listen," he asked for my details, blah blah blah. He said, "Listen, tonight we will have an itinerary sent through to you." So sure enough, this itinerary comes through, flights booked, my name on it. So I'm thinking, well, if it is a joke, it's a joke. I'm still going to Edinburgh for a flight, and I'm going across. And I remember ringing my mum and that and saying, "Listen, I've got a trial here." And oh, they were all delighted. And I remember ringing my fiance at the time and said, "Listen, I've got a trial across for Hibs next week." My wife knows nothing about football, and she says, "Well, tell me this: what time will you be home from your tea?" She thought Hibernian was Sunday, down south. She just doesn't know about football. So I said, "No, I don't think you're getting this. This is in Scotland." So we had just about getting ready for a mortgage to buy a house back home, and we were about to get married, and of course this chance came, and that was on the Friday, and on the Sunday night I got the flight over to Edinburgh, and Mark Venus lifted me, and I'll never forget, I stayed in the Carlton Hotel, and he put me there, and I had the week's trial, and I went over, and hey, listen, I never looked back. Dean Shields, Sammy Morrow was there, and I walked into a squad of Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson, Gary Caldwell, Ian Murray, all the, you knew these players from across water, and even from back here, with Rangers and Celtic being so big, but you knew about these players that Hibs had, this young side, and I just walked into the middle of it, and as I said, I never disrespected anybody, but I can remember, training that week, and again, Derek Reardon, Gary O'Connor, they're all there, but I never felt out of place. And the one thing that probably I had over everybody was the pace, and I just made sure that whenever I got the chance to expose that or play against players and use that week, I did do. And I think we actually played a training game on the Thursday. Was a bounce game at one of the parks, because at that time Hibs didn't have a training ground, so one of the random parks we were took to, and I remember getting David Murphy squared up, and I thought, right, you're having it here. and Murph was a fine player, and as soon as we played that game, Tony Mowbray waved me over, and he just said, "Listen, we would be keen to do something with you." And listen, no matter what they offered me at that time, I would take it, because it was the chance. It was the chance to get your foot in the door, to prove to them that you could be something, and I knew I still had a lot of learning to do, and I still had to Tony Mowbray had to chip the edges off, and again, you had to put all these good players, this golden generation that Hibs had at that time, you had to dislodge some of them, but it was a challenge, and one that I embraced, and as I said, I never looked back. And I'm so grateful to Hibs and Tony Mowbray for giving me that chance.
You mentioned obviously the contract that Hibs offered. I think it was only 14 months, Ivan. Do you think that helped you keep the hunger? Do you think if you maybe got a 3 or 4 year deal, you might have maybe lost a wee bit of that? Was that you trying to prove yourself again, do you think?
I was always the underdog. I've always been the underdog, and I remember when I signed, and again, I had to move my partner over. She had to hand a notice in for a job, and I was living with Amadou Conte, the first flat that I ever got, and then obviously my partner came over, and we got a flat down Leith and stuff, and it was a whole adoption thing to life, never mind the football. But I was so hungry, and I did mention I used to go to training every day, and I'm sure Tony Moore used to pull his hair because I was fighting all the time in training, and I always felt I should have been in the team, and I wasn't in the team, and I was never one that was happy just to rock up in the training gear and think this was it, I've made it, I can walk around Edinburgh, I've signed for Hibs. That wasn't me. I wanted to be on that team. I wanted to get that contract, and the one thing about Tony Mowbray, I remember at the start, it was a very small contract it was on. Basically, I'm not going to tell any difference. It wouldn't have been much more than it would have been on if it had signed for Derry City back home. But it was the opportunity. It was what it could lead to, and it was what it could do. So you're absolutely right in what you're saying. The hunger was always there. The desire was always there to prove and to get that next contract. And Tony Mowbray looked after me. I can remember not being too happy with one of the flats that I got, and I called him and said, "Listen, my partner's moving over. Can you help me out? Can you improve that situation with my living? Even if I don't get any more money or anything, I just want somewhere where it's a bit more comfortable to live." And I remember him doing that for me, and it was those things that I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about the glitz, the glamour. I just wanted to be in that team, and the rewards will always come to you after. So listen, again, hunger was always there, and at the first year, believe me, it was difficult at Hibs, because again they had so many good young players, and I had to adapt to full-time training. I had to adapt to living in a new city. I had to adapt to being away from my family, and all in all, you had to make your body stronger. You had to understand the game better and stuff. And but listen, I sponged every day. I was like a sponge. Anything I could learn, I did learn. I tried to do as much extra as I could and build myself up. And again, I think at the end up, I think the proof in the pudding was there that hard work that I put in that first year and persevering paid off.
Obviously, you struggled to settle in, as you say, Ivan. Were you ever close to moving back home? Or was that ever in your mind at any point, or was it just pure determination just to prove people?
Bags were packed. All bags were packed on top of the bed one night down Leith, and I was going home. I'd went out and tell the story. I went out on a night out with the Hibs lads, and again, I'd never really been up the town too much at the start, and we all went out, and of course, the story goes that we were all drinking, and I was really unheard of at Hibs at that time. Oh yes, I'd signed, but me and I think Dean Cheese and Sammy and Boozy and that, and me and Boozy get into an altercation, and I ended up putting the nut in Boozy that night in a club up in the middle of the town, because I thought it was back home, and that's just what you know back home.
It's not what you do in France, so.
It was a row over nothing, and I remember that week it was a bit rough between Boozy and me and Tony Mowbray, and Boozy was a big player at that time, and I think I was going to go back to Linfield, and I had the bags all packed, and my wife's father flew over and says, "Listen, you're crazy, you've worked so hard," and I was chipping closer to it. I did know that, and the story goes that was in the Saturday night, and Tony Mowbray rung me on Wednesday and said, "Listen, that because I had probably the conversation, I wanted to go home, so Linfield were willing to take me, the biggest club back home, and wanted to take me." And then on the Thursday morning, Tony Mowbray rung me to come in and speak to him at Easter Road, and I remember he sat me up in the middle of Easter Road, and he says, "You've worked so hard for a year, you've had your setbacks, but your time's going to come. You just need to calm yourself down a wee bit and stuff." And that Thursday, we went into training on the Friday, and we were going to Ibrox on the Saturday. So that was a space of a week. So I had the bags packed on a Wednesday, and the hat-trick happened on the Saturday.
Wow.
So I walked off the park at Ibrox that Saturday, and all Tony Mowbray says to me, "You're not going home now. You're not going home now, and your life's never going to be the same." So no truer words were spoke that day I walked off the park, but little do people know, the bags were packed down Leith on the Wednesday. I'd nutted Boozy the Saturday night previous, and Boozy's actually the one, if you look at the image of that caption, Boozy's the one who got me in his arms, lifted me in the air. And hey, listen, it's a Royal of the Rovers. It's just that career had so many twists and tails, but after that, my career just, there was a new contract straight after the hat-trick, and I got my first Northern Ireland cap. We played Rangers, and then I got rung in the Monday to Tony Mowbray's office. He said, "Listen, you're flying back to Belfast. You've been called up to the national team," and I never was capped at any level at use. So I flew back to Belfast, and I'm getting lifted to be took to the Hilton Temple Patrick, and I'm in there, and Keith Gillespie, David Healy, all my national team heroes, and we're only playing no more than England on the Wednesday night, and I was involved in the double header, and I ended up coming on for David Healy on the night we beat England 1-0, which is the big famous night over here for Northern Ireland fans. And I was a Spurs fan as a youngster, and Defoe's warming up beside me, and I'm walking onto the pitch, and there's Beckham and Rooney and Lampard, and I'm going down the wing by Ashley Cole, and I'm thinking that was the hat-trick against Rangers. Now I'm playing against England. Then I flew back, and we played Dundee the Saturday after the Rangers. And again, Mowbray still put me on the bench, and I come off the bench, and it was 1-1 against Dundee, and I scored the winner again, and we won 2-1, and I never looked back after that. And as I say, anything I got, I worked hard for, but it was probably Tony Mowbray made that all happen, because that conversation on the Thursday morning to probably turn my mind around and keep me there and make me stay there, and make me realise how hard I worked. The rest is history now.
Aye, obviously, we're going to come on to the famous game at Ibrox, but I just wanted to ask you before that, Ivan, you said that Tony Mowbray was really helpful. Was there any other guys in the team that helped you during that difficult spell? I know that obviously you knew Dean Shields and Sam Morrow, but was there anyone else that kind of took you under their wing?
Dean and Sammy was obviously my countrymen, and I'll be honest with you, them was the two boys I used to fall upon a lot and speak to a lot. But I actually had a friend from back home that lived in Edinburgh, and it had nothing to do with the club or that, but he was just a normal lad. He had a job over there. His wife was Scottish, and I used to go to his house a lot with my partner. And it was just the fact they going round for dinner during the week, and it wasn't as much the footballers. He was a connection to me. He was a friendly face. He was a face that I knew, and all the players at that time, the Scott Browns and the Tomos, they were young boys. We were all going through. We were a young side. There probably wasn't. I think Gary, so we didn't have as many father figures in that changing room. But Tony Mowbray was one that really, really, as much as he asked you about how you done at your football, he took an interest at how you were getting on. Like I mentioned about the flat, when I needed that flat changed, or if things, how things were for you. Were you happy? How was your family? How was your partner? And he always made you feel very, very comfortable. And out of anybody, I think Tony Mowbray was one. He was your manager, but he was almost like a best friend, friendy. And I think if you had anything on your chest, or you had something that you wanted to chat to, you felt as if you could knock his door and go in, and the conversation would stay private between yourself and him. And that was it. And Tam McCourt and Joyce McCourt, the kit lady and the kit man at Hibs, they've been there longer than the stand.
Just about.
But they were great people for me, and Rod Petrie, Sheila Kinghorn. I started to make friends with them all. It was a real family thing at that time, and they were the big people in the club, but they always took time for you, and they always stopped with you and made you feel very, very welcome. And if I was to ask you who was the people, they were all the people, and I mentioned my mate, but the fans were the ones that really probably took to me. And again, I lived down Leith, and I think I went under the heartbeat of the club. I lived down there. I used to jump the bus, and that sometimes the fans couldn't understand. There's Hammy, he's on the bus. But me and my partner, that was just the way we were. And I think that probably endeared us more to the fans, and that, or for me to the fans, and that more time that I kept it probably real and simple. And because you seen sometimes what you meant to them, even at the early age, or the early stages, they made me feel welcome, and the city made me feel welcome. And I think I always class Edinburgh now as my second home, and until this day, I can't wait to take my boys back over and stuff. And it's just part and parcel of being a footballer, that wee bit of homesickness at the start, and it probably comes when you're a younger kid, whereas I was a lot older, but at the same time you still miss home.
I just wanted to ask, Ivan, you mentioned the fans and how they took to you. What I always remember about going to Easter Road, which I'll never forget, is it got to the point where every time you got the ball, I mean, I was sitting as a young kid in the stand, and the whole stand would stand up, and there'd be a collective almost roar when you got the ball. And no other player, that's never happened again at Easter Road. I mean, for me as a fan, that gave me goosebumps. So, I mean, what was that like for you as a player?
Well, sometimes I don't know what I was going to do with the ball myself. And I think Tony Mowbray and Mark Venus at times didn't know what I was going to do with the ball, but they chipped it for ages, and they turned me into the player that I was. Like I was just an attacking old style winger, and I can remember, the way we played. It was we were set up to attack. We were set up to go for teams, and that was Celtic and Rangers included. We weren't told to right, we're going to sit back today. We're going to play with a defensive block. We're going to sit in deep and, catch them in the counter attack. Although a lot of the games that you watch, the big games that we won, yes, we counter attack, but we fancied ourselves against anybody. And listen, I was having the time of my life. I was just I just played the game with freedom. Uh, and you can imagine as a young boy having a dream to be a footballer. And I used to go to my bed at the ages of 18 and 19 and still dreaming of being a professional footballer. And that sounds that really corny and that, but I really did. And you can imagine standing at the age of, becoming a Hibs player, which was a dream for me, an absolute dream, a boyhood dream. And then to actually stand in the middle of Easter Road and Easter Road packed. And then it got to the stage where there was an anticipation for me, even if I didn't start the game and I was on the bench and you come on and there was a roar and people, I remember the old stand at the far side, and you could it got to a certain time in the game if it was 1-0 or whatever, and they started singing my name, and I could see Tony Mowbray, the conversations would go and you come on, and then that roar would go up, and that stayed with me. That stays with me for the rest. I'll take that to my grave, and you come on, and then because then people wanted you on, and they believed so much on you. I didn't go on there as one person. I went on there with 15 or 30. I felt as if I was, you know what I mean? I had a full stand with me. Every pass, every run that I went on, they were with me. They were cheering me on, and that's a powerful, powerful thing to have when you know you have the backing of the fans. And Easter Road was a special place, and I was very, very lucky to play over 100 times for Hibs, and it's just I'm so glad that was what the fans remembered me for. That was somebody that could excite them and I suppose get people on the edge of their seat. And listen, there's nobody would turn around and say that I was the finished article in a Hibs shirt, because I certainly wasn't. But I certainly believe that I entertained and brought that excitement value to the team that at that time that were full of exciting players.
You mentioned, how you'd go for games against Celtic and Rangers. There was a 3-1 win v Celtic, and then obviously we get to the famous game, the 3-0 victory. You actually obviously start on the bench. I think Gary O'Connor said that he done most of the work by tiring the defence out, but I didn't believe it at the time, Ivan, so I can imagine you didn't believe that.
Listen, big guys, one of my best friends, in football, and again, a lifelong friend. And I think I come off, the story goes, when I come off that day, he turned around to Mowbray, he says, what's he going to do? But the underdog again. And again, I come on that day, and I told you the story earlier on about that week leading up there and stuff. And I suppose there was a lot of confusion in that in my head. But that day, there was something special about that day, and there was a spark inside me. And, one thing that Tony Mowbray taught us, when you're on the bench, assess the game, watch the game, see where the spaces are, see where you can expose players. And I knew from watching, again, big guys that couldn't run, from watching that game, if I had the chance to do it, I could expose them. And again, the counter, Scott Brown, if anybody that day, played a pivotal part in the hat-trick. And I remember lobbing the first one, and the second one was the breakaway, and the third one was the nudging Rickson and getting round and going in. And I remember the fans in the corner, and I did really have to probably pinch myself when the first one went in, but I thought I was dreaming when the third one went in. But here, listen, it's a game that probably for me, it'll be took to the grave of me, because everybody mentions it back over here, and when you go to Scotland, it's the hat-trick is a hat-trick. I've actually got more goals against Celtic than I do against Rangers, but nobody ever chats about that. They'll always chat about the hat-trick. And I suppose looking back, not many players go to Ibrox, and at that time, Rangers being the side that they were, and you're not supposed to do that. I suppose that's what people really say, but we had no fear. And it was a lively change rooms afterwards. And no, listen, it was something that'll live with me, and it's special because, like, people know, when I was a young boy growing up, like, obviously I was a Rangers supporter growing up when I was a young kid, and obviously that all changed whenever I got the Hibs in. Like, now I'm the green and white, the green's on there, like it's there the whole way, and my kids are the same. And but I had some of my friends and the Rangers in, but I remember seeing them outside after the game, and it was just unsurreal for them as well. And then it just so happened that every time we played Rangers or Celtic, then I ended up scoring, and the rest is history.
You mentioned the role Scott Brown played in that game, Ivan. I think a lot of football fans forget how dynamic Scott. I mean, obviously he changed his role when he went to Celtic, and it's meant that he's had a long career. But how good was he back then?
Machine. Uh, Up there with one of the very, very finest that I've played with. Box to box midfielders, energy. The energy levels that he played the game with was something that you don't really see too often, and that was anywhere that I went in my career. And you knew when Scott got the ball that he had the power and the pace to go and do that to teams. And I think you mentioned the previous game when we beat Celtic 3-1 at Parkhead, when that kind of started at that time, and he made a run, he burst through there. The two of us scored that day as well, and he scored a wee chip over. But he was so strong and so powerful, and I think that probably, at that time as well, as much as it put me in the map, listen, Scott was a big name, but I think that day for him probably let the full of Scotland take up notice that, here, listen, he's the real deal. He really was, and it's no surprise to me that he's been on and been so successful for Celtic and so successful for Scotland throughout the years. And a real close friend, no further than away the other night, he had dropped me a text about something private, and I'm the same with him. And it was great to see him get on to have the career he had, because he certainly, when you say about players that would have helped you at that time, he was a funny character. He was a lively character like myself. The two of us, like, you can imagine Tony Mowbray trying to handle that changing room, because we had a lot of characters with Big Gaz, with Deeks, with all the boys that were there, you know what I mean? But Scotty was just such a lovely, lovely lad, a great kid, and happy through and through as well, you know what I mean? He was one of those ones at that time that you knew you really loved the club, and then of course he excelled to a stage where he had to probably take that move to Celtic for Champions League football, for I suppose all those titles that he got. But a great friend, and someone that I'm sure, like yourself, really enjoyed watching in a Hibs jersey.
And obviously that young team, I mean, Scott Brown was a top player, but who do you think was the best out of that young Tony Mowbray team? You can't say yourself as well, Ivan.
How can you pick one? You got Deeks. Like, Deeks was a left foot, right foot finisher, lethal, absolutely lethal. Big Gaz was a powerhouse, and just believed if he would have been up against Paolo Maldini, Big Gaz would have felt it was if he was going to score a hat-trick. Big Gaz just believed. He used to say to us, Big Gaz scores goals, and that was his thing. And 9 times out of 10 he did. And then, you had younger ones again, like Stephen Fletcher, that were coming in behind that, and Kevin Thompson, Scott Brown, Guillaume Bouzlin, Stephen Glass was there at that time. You had Gary Caldwell, you had Ian Murray, you had David Murphy, you had Stephen Whittaker. How do you pick somebody out of that? They all had different attributes. They all were great players. For me, it was very, very hard at that time. They all went on to, a lot of that team moved on. Nearly everybody I mentioned there moved on to go to the Championship or go to Rangers or Celtic, basically at that time. I think the strongest part, not one player, I think the strongest part of that was the team, was us all as a collective group. Sometimes you can pick one person, but I think that team gelled, or whatever group of that team it was, it gelled. So couldn't pick you one, and that's me. And I'm not taking the easy way out, but I think the reason why we all had success wasn't because of one person. It was because Scott Brown made me play well. I would like to think at times I helped Gary O'Connor play well. The likes of Kevin Thompson helped Derek Reardon play well. David Murphy helped, for me, Stephen Whittaker helped me play well. There were so many good players. Dean Shea, you're mentioning Dean Shields, all those players. Zamama, Benji, all them boys. There was a lot of great, terrific players. So Rob Jones, centre half. I know them boys come on later on in my career, but certainly for me, top players.
And obviously, you mentioned the kind of the core of both teams are the John Collins and the Tony Mowbray team. I mean, I've argued this for many years, and I believe if all the players had stayed together and hit their prime, later on in a few years, I've got no doubt that at least they'd be challenging at the top end. I think they challenged for the league, Ivan. Is that how you felt back then?
I think if we could have stayed together, I do believe that we'd have run. You need a squad. You need a squad then to do that. You need even 16 players, and then you need another 4 players outside that 16 that are probably not happy sitting there as that 4, and then that 6 are pushing that 11. So we had that, but we never. There was always 1 or 2 drifting off. Somebody always left. Somebody always left. Uh, I would love to see Hibs having that financial power. Let's understand how football works. Football works that you get to a certain stage and then contracts are offered, and whenever the chance of probably Rangers and Celtic comes knocking, it's life changing to what they can get. And then, like myself, he was a late developer. When I had to leave, I left, and I'm not going to ever deny this. I left for a financial reason because I was late into the game, and I was getting a chance to go down to England where the money's so much higher. And I'll call a spade a spade. That was the reason I took that move at that time. Uh, and that was, it's sad to say that, because if we could all been held together, I think there would have been more trophies, there would have been more success. But hey, listen, that's part and parcel of football. And you're right in what you're saying. You never know what would it have done it, would it not? But certainly the way the players felt at that time around Tony Mowbray, uh, and then it started off with John Collins. I think that Tony Mowbray era, definitely, if it could have stayed together for another year or two without selling anybody, I think there'd have been a trophy in the door quite soon.
Brilliant. Tony Mowbray leaves for West Brom. Were you disappointed, Ivan? I know that obviously football life goes on, but you must have been disappointed that the guy that brought you to Hibs had now left.
Got it. I think I remember going for a meal down Leith again. He took us all for a meal, and I don't know why this meal happened this day, but he took us, and it was a bit random. Gaffer taking you out for a meal, and all the players went down, and I think it was him and Vino's way of kind of saying we heard whispers, and then we knew that day when we were going, he's buying you a knock-up meal. I'll not say what it says. He's going here, but got it. I got it because we all liked him, we loved him, but you understand, as I said, at that time, probably West Brom and where they were and what they could offer him, and maybe where he's seen his pathway at that time, he had to take it. So we understood because of that. But as a selfish point of view, a bit like probably look at players, as a selfish point of view, you just wish they never take that move. You just wish they never move on. And I wish that he never moved on. And listen, he did, and I'll always be eternally grateful for the way that he treated me and the way that I think he had a bond with the supporters as well. I think he was a very, very much liked man within the club. And I know he's a very respected man in the football circles anyway. But here, listen, it's one of those ones in football. Managers come, players come and go, managers come and go, but the fans and the club will always remain, and that's the one great thing about Hibernian.
So John Collins comes in. I've got to ask, Ivan, how good was John Collins' six-pack?
Wasn't as good as me and Brownies.
Or Gary O'Connor's.
Or big gases, I had that. But no, listen, nobody has to. John Collins and where he was in his career and what he done, and the name John Collins, you just think class. You think of great Scotland. You think of Scotland. You think of European football. England, where when he was foreign and everything, and it was one that when he came in, it was he was a high profile name and probably a good appointment at that time, because he had tried to add that bit of professionalism into the club, and he had his own style with Tommy Craig. And listen, it was one of those ones when he came in, he inherited a very, very good side, a good attacking young side. He certainly tried to put his own twist to it, and I think for me, he was a good manager. But again, come near the end, the move came. I turned down the move to Dnipro, to Ukraine. That was a move that I turned down early in Tony Mowbray's era, and then this move came up when Bristol City get promoted to the Championship. And then sadly for John, John didn't want me to go, but as I've read, being honest and opinionated about giving you the opinion where I went, I could not turn that move down at that time. And unfortunately for me, I didn't get to work with John as long as probably we both would have liked, but we won the cup together, and I'll always be grateful for that. He come in halfway through that cup run, and as I said, it's one of those ones that football moves on, and he didn't probably last as long as what we thought he was going to last at Hibs, but that's football.
So you mentioned the League Cup run. It starts, well, halfway through, we face Hearts in the quarter-final and beat them 1-0. How good were the Edinburgh derbies to play in, Ivan?
Magic. You used to, Rangers and Celtic were special, but they were different. Because you knew you had to go down to Asda on the Saturday. You had to go get the shopping in, and you knew because wherever you went, you couldn't get away from it. And at that time, I watch football now, and I see sometimes derbies, and I see players coming off hung with one another, and it's almost like they're speaking under their mouth and they're talking to one another. That certainly wasn't the way whenever I went out the tunnel at Tynecastle or Easter Road. And I'm not saying that I don't hate anybody. Hate's a strong word, but I had a dislike for them. I had a dislike for Hearts. I had a dislike for their club. They had a dislike for our club, but it was healthy, if you know what I mean. And you need that. Football clubs need that. You need to be, for me, you need to be up for the challenge when it comes to a derby. And Hearts brung it to us, and we brung it to their doorstep. And listen, I've been on the other side of it. I've been on defeats in them, and I've come out the other side and won some. But when you get one and you get it right, that's a nice feeling.
Did you prefer playing the derbies at Easter Road or Tynecastle?
Well, probably the happier memories were always at Easter Road, and the more poor results we got were maybe a wee bit more at Tynecastle. But I used to embrace it when I went there, because I used to take dogs abuse, like we all took dogs abuse, if you know what I mean. But it was one of those ones. Hey, listen, Hibs. I don't think Hibs are the same way at Hearts, and Hearts aren't the same way at Hibs. I want to see Hearts back up in the SPL for the simple reason is I want to go to that derby. I want to be the fan this time that sits in at that derby. And for me, that they're special days. I would be buzzing if I was a supporter and I was in the middle of that crowd watching that game, because it must be goosebumps. And certainly as a player, I was lucky to do it, and I was lucky to get my wins in it. I know that the Jambos will always be happy to say I never scored against them. It was the one club in Scotland that I couldn't manage to get it in, and that was my one regret in football. But well, we had our ones, and that done me. But no, listen, be glad to see Hearts back up there. I know we'll be glad, and we get a laugh sometimes when, and the same with Hearts, if Hibs went down and they stayed up, or Hearts went down, vice versa. But the two clubs need each other, and it's a good, healthy, rivalry. But certainly, for me, back then, them derbies, there was spice to them. I can remember there was a few lads that didn't like me in the Hearts team at that time. I particularly didn't like them, and that's the way I liked it.
Brilliant. You did have a happy memory at Tynecastle, Ivan, the semi-final against St Johnstone. What are your memories of that game? A brilliant game to watch as a fan.
A cracker. Again, we knew we were one step away from that final, and I can still remember there was a big crowd of Hibs fans there, and it was at nighttime game, and you were getting you're getting bussed in, and there was a real atmosphere. And I can remember the first goal. I can remember going on a run down the left wing and cutting inside, and I cut it back to Fletch, and Fletch knocks it in, and we won up on the noise. And St Johnstone, gave us a real good game for it that night, and they had a good side at that time, and it went the full way. And I can remember I was took off later on in the game, and we got the goals later on, and just elation to make the final. And we knew then, I think we knew when we got to the final that year, that we weren't going to slip up, or we weren't going to mess up. And no, again, it was a magic night, and a night that took us to the final, and as I suppose it was another step in the right direction.
What was the build-up like to the final, Ivan? Did John Collins take the team away in the lead-up to the final?
John took us out to Marbella. Don't know if Rod Pitcher was that keen about it, but we were when we had the best of the best. We stayed in the best hotel with I think it was the Adidas training camp, and listen, he was a top professional. He looked after us well. He prepared us for the final. We went away. We trained hard. I can still remember the hotel, and there was fancy cakes and buns and all something. They put this big buffet out, and we weren't near the cake. Everything to the last tee he took care of, and he had us in a real good emotional place as well as physical place at that time, and that was his experiences as a player. And we went away and we bonded for that week, and then we come back, and as I said, we blew Kilmarnock away in the final. Literally, we steamrolled them. We had just too much on the day for them. And again, sometimes you get preparation right for a final. Sometimes you can get it wrong. But on that day, I thought he was spot on. And I can remember the night before the final, he come round to everybody's room with a DVD that he had at that time. Now DVDs and clips is part and parcel. They've got backroom people. They've got analysis, whatever. But back then it was kind of unheard of. You might have seen your goals on TV and that, but he put together, it was like a montage. Made you look like Penny. So he gave us this montage. So he gave every player one, and I can remember sitting in my room that night and watching it on my laptop or whatever it was, and it was kind of a look back at what you'd done for Hibs since you first came, and I just I knew then, well, tomorrow morning when I get up and have my breakfast, I'm not going for a loser's medal. I'm coming home with a winner's one, and because I'd already done that for Hibs, and if I do this for them and I get us over the line, because it was the Skull Cup team was the team before that, and no matter what you do for a team and no matter how well you play, I think every fan and that'll always remember, have you won something? Have you actually left your name engraved in that history books for them? And we knew we had a chance of doing it. That because so many great teams never get to a final, and that was our chance to that good era that you mentioned, that we've spoken about so many players about. That was that era that we had to nail it, and we had to get it in the day, and listen, we did.
Brilliant. Rob Jones scores a captain's goal to get us off to a flyer. How good a captain was the big man?
The big Rob was great. Actually, a quiet big, a big gentle giant, but on the park, he was a strong, aggressive big man, and went about his business, and a good captain off the park. Done come in, set the standards in the training ground. For me, was a winner, wanted to be a winner, and he pushed everybody else around him. So listen, it was one of those ones. Rob was a worthy captain to go and lift the cup that day. I think him and Scotty actually both maybe went up and lifted it that day, but he gave a performance that day in the final that was worthy of a man of the match. I know young Lewis got it in the day, but he was a powerhouse for us and someone that we did respect in the changing room, and I think he stood for the values of what a Hibs captain stands for, and for me, when you look back at it now, the great Damon Gray, he was going on now to lift the Scottish Cup. Rob Jones, the captains go on, but when you're a captain and you've lifted a cup for the club, it definitely means something.
And the celebrations when the full-time whistle goes, Ivan, I mean, from where you'd come from in such a short space of time, and obviously you mentioned the difficult times when you were growing up as well. Do you let that sink in? Is it hard to take it in straight away, or do you think back to the difficult times, on the pitch and celebrating?
I'm not going to lie, I stood and cried in the park. There was a moment where Sunshine Leaf was playing, and I remember, you won the cup, you go out onto the pitch, and you don't really realise what you've done. I had all my family over from Northern Ireland. Everybody was there in the stand, and I knew they were there. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there somewhere. And my wife and that, and for me to see that amount of people and the outpouring of joy that they give that day, and all the players, it was all our first major trophy won, and for doing it for each other as well at that time, and I suppose my own personal journey to get to where I was, and all the knocks that I had when I was a youngster, with my career, and I suppose my private life with my dad and my brother, and the Hibs thing at the start when I never thought it might not work, and the bag was packed at one stage, and the hat trick, and then going on, and that was just something that you realise then that no matter what 3 points you ever give the Hibs fans and their manager, or special games that you win, that's a one-off game that'll be chatted about, just like all the other cup ones for years and years and years. And if you do give something like that to supporters and fans, I think they'll always have your back, and they'll always thank you for it. And for me to give that to the Hibs fans that day, and personally to give it to myself and my own family was a massive thing. And But as much as that, what Hibs have given me to that day to actually play in that game and represent them fans was something that I'll, as I say, never ever ever forget.
Brilliant. So you mentioned your reasons. Obviously, when you eventually do leave Hibs, the first time to go to Bristol City, was that a sad day leaving Hibs, or were you just trying to keep all your focus on going down south?
I think I think I always seen myself as, I worked very very hard under Tony Mowbray, and I felt I got my game to a certain level. I felt as if I was probably at that time, I was hitting 10 goals a season from either right wing and sometimes deployed as a striker, so mainly out the wing. My assists were really, really good. I'd worked in that part of my game, and people know how football works. My agent said, "Listen, this is a real strong move to Bristol City. They're an ambitious club with an ambitious chairman. They've highlighted you as their top target, along with Lee Trundle. Lee Trundle was at Swansea. I was at Hibs. He says, these are going to be two of their marquee signings, and uh, you know, they asked for me to speak to me to Hibs, and I was allowed to speak to them. And Rod Petey rung me, and I just knew that I'd won the cup with Hibs, and I knew I had left that behind me. I knew if we hadn't won that cup, probably, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have took the move, but I probably would have had unfinished business. And I felt as if that, right, I've done something really special here now. That move came in the cards that summer. Uh, I'm not going to lie about the thing that there was times John Collins and me got on. There was times that we didn't. There was maybe a bit of a difference in opinion sometimes. I'm not saying I was easy managed, and I'm not saying he was wrong, but I felt as if that maybe I could see maybe the writing on the wall somewhere on down the line, and everything pointed towards that move to Bristol City. And I'll be honest, that was a move that worked tremendously well as well for the length of 4 years that I was down there. Maybe not the last one, but I had 4 fantastic years in the Championship, playing in the FA Cup and getting to the playoff final at Wembley with 86,000 people there. When one game away, I'll not tell you what I called Dean Mundas for hitting that volley against us for Hull, but it was the right move because I was one game away from the Premier League. When I went down there and played 36 games for Bristol City that first season, and I thought proved myself as a real not top Championship player, but device capable of audio playback connected. Established as a Championship player. So for me, it was a good move.
So, how did you find the Championship compared to Scotland? Was there any significant differences in maybe the standard? Was it more emphasis on fitness and
physical power? They're a lot more bigger boys. They're the money. Let's be honest. There's more money down there. So with more money, you get more conditioning coaches. You get more physios. You get, there's chefs for this. I just found the facilities and infrastructure was, and Hibs are a big club, but it was a big thing for me to go down there, that I had to increase my body again, that I had to find a different core strength, and not learning to play the game again. Your natural talents there and everything you've learned there, but you do have to almost nearly get your body into another physical shape again, and that was one of the things that I adapted with. But my body, I don't know. Again, I think it was 11 stone when I stopped playing. I'm a wee bit over 11 stone now, all the same. But I always seemed to manage to, as a small boy, I think my pace was on, and I think because I was more stronger than my head than I was in my body. I used to think that I was strong, so I adapted pretty quickly. But it was the pace and the power of the Championship. And because there's so many games, you need to keep your body in a physical shape as well. But for me, no, listen, the SPL and the Scottish Premiership was a top league. But certainly the Championship provided me with another challenge then.
and you get the opportunity to return back to Hibs? How did that move come about, Ivan?
Move happened, to be honest with you. It was one of those ones that I had played the 4 years, and the last year the contract at Bristol, there was probably always be my fault, but I had a disagreement with my old gaffer at that time, and I knew it was in the way out of Bristol City, and it was one of those ones that sometimes you just feel as if it's the right time for a move, And I can remember, at that time, probably thinking, should have stayed out in England, should have tried and get another championship club, should you drop down to, to League One, or, there was clubs interested, and I knew there was clubs interested, but something inside me always knew that I was going to go back. And I'll be honest with you, there was more money offered probably elsewhere, and that's honestly, truth being told. But I knew at that time that I had a family to take care of, and I wanted somewhere that I would be comfortable, and there was somewhere that I was going to go back. And as much as playing football is important, living your life's important as well. And I had an attachment with Hibs, and it was just something that was very, very special. And if I thought, if I can get anywhere, if I can just pull on that shirt even one more time, I was itching to do it. And even my wife says to me, and everybody's saying, be patient. There was good clubs looking for me around that time, but they knew, and I think my wife knows me a long, long time. She says, there's only one place you're going, and they knew it. And again, whenever I got the phone call from Colin Calderwood to come up, and I got to see the new training facility when I got up the road and stuff, and I was impressed with that, because I thought, now the club has moved on, they've progressed, and I went back up to see if I could make a different second time round. Uh, and hey, listen, I know it wasn't the successful period that we had the first time round, and that I had a change of managers there quite quickly, and we all know the rest of the story. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of things going on there was a lot of players. The first time I was at Hibs, we probably had a group of players that stayed together for a long time. There's players coming and going all the time. I'm not saying that I had the heights that I was at there before, but it was definitely behind the scenes. It was a lot difficulter than it was the first time round, and it changed. But listen, never any regrets for taking that move back. And so glad that I was able to go back and, as I say, play over 100 times for Hibs. Is something that I could only ever have dreamed of.
And as you just mentioned there, Ivan, so overall you played 147 times for Hibs and you scored 22 goals. How do you look back on your Hibs career?
Pride, absolute pride. To play, and I always say it, to play once for Hibs, to come on at Easter Road in front of that crowd, put that shirt on, would have been would have done me, just because it was fantastic for me to get across the water, and to play for such a big established club, but to do it that many times, and to chip on with a few goals along the way, and you know involved in magic memories and great games that as you says, putting young boys at the edge of their seat, and you know just making people happy. And I'd like to think that that was my last memory at Hibs, was making people happy. They certainly made me happy, and listen, I'm as fond of Hibs as they are as me, and that's truth being told. It was just a fantastic, fantastic time in my life, and one that I look back with very, very fondly.
Brilliant. So you actually ended up staying in Scotland, Ivan, and you went to Ross County. Unfortunately, you ended up scoring against us as well, which was unfortunate. I mean, but how was your time at Ross County?
Absolutely loved it. Loved it. I'll be honest with you, you know, Pat come in, and I was probably one of the big figures in the change room. And listen, when Pat came in, he made me skip. I remember skipper on the side out against Dunfermline. We beat Dunfermline in a basement game one day, and I remember standing with an armband on me that day, and I thought, this might be the start of something again here, and I can lead the boys and whatever. But again, he had his own ideas. He was wanting to stamp something new on it, and it didn't work out for me and him. And I think I was the bigger man at that time, because I didn't stand around and hang around and make his life difficult. I went in and says to him, listen, I think you're trying to build something new here. I think for me, if I can move on, and let you build something fresh and something new at the club, well, then I'll do so. And we spoke about it for a while. And again, I went to meet Rod Petrie to obviously make that move, because at that time, even he knew it was going to probably friction for fans and stuff. Uh, with me leaving, but I took the move to Ross County, and I remember, I'll not lie about it, I stood and cried with Sheila Kinghorn and Rod Petrie and said, listen, I can't believe I'm doing it, but I need to get back playing football for me. I need to do this. I'm not someone that walks around the streets of Edinburgh saying, "Here's Ivan Sproule, he plays with Hibs. I'm happy to be here." You need to earn, whenever you're playing football, you need to earn your money. And I wasn't earning my money at Hibs at that time, so I done the right thing, and I took a move and went up to Ross County, and goals were flying in for fun. I think the first game was live in Sky against St Mirren, and I scored 2, beat them 3-1. And then I think the second game, Hibs come to play us up at Dingwall, and I scored the winner to beat them 1-0. I can remember the goal. We worked on it. Vigors put me through, and I remember splitting Paul Hanlon and Lewin Stevenson round the keeper, and we did. And I says to the boys, if I score, I'm not celebrating. Ross County boys were so respectful; they stayed away from me. I ended up taking the move at that time to Ross County because Pat was trying to build something new, and I knew that at that time that I was probably a big figure in the changing room, and I felt as if for him to get on with his work and build something for him, I had to go. I was never one that sat about and was a bad egg in anybody's changing room, and I never felt as if it was the right thing to do. I had too much respect for the club, and that was the reason why I moved. That's one of my regrets, scoring against Hibs. I never wanted to do it, but it was a professional thing, and I thought I conducted myself well that day. And I remember I hurt my hamstring that day coming off against Hibs, and we beat them 1-0, and the Hibs fans clapped me off. And that was special even for me to watch a person that had scored against them. We were going to beat them 1-0, but they still clapped me off. And again, Hibs went on, and Pat went on to have what career he did. And that season I flew at Ross County and really, really did well. And as I said, they were really, really good to me up there as well, even their fans. And no matter where I went, Bristol City, Hibs or Ross County, to be honest, I've been very, very lucky. The fans have always adhered to me. And I think when you look back at Ross County's history now, they went on to win the League Cup. In fact, I was over at that game as a Hibs supporter. I don't think the Ross County fans are too happy right enough. But listen, it's one of those ones that, another good place that I enjoyed my football. And I ended up ending my career up there, but in Scotland. But again, it's a career I fondly look back on.
So you end your playing and going to management back home. Was that always the plan, Ivan, eventually to finish up back home?
I went back. I always knew when I went away, I was always going to come back home and live. I always knew that because my wife was from back here, and my family's my most important thing. My mum, my sisters, my brothers are the most important thing in my life, and my kids and my wife, and giving my kids and my wife that support network around them, and that was the way I wanted to do it. And I come back home from Ross County and signed with the biggest club in Northern Ireland, which is Linfield, and again that was always something as a young boy. When you grow up in Northern Ireland, you want to play for Linfield because they're the most successful club in this country and the whole Ireland. So I done that, and it was another thing you could always tick off the bucket list that I done that. And unfortunately, I had 2 real bad knee injuries in 3 years I was there that probably ended my career completely. And the next step for me was a challenge to go and manage my local side in the championship and see if I could cut my teeth in management and hopefully someday take them to the Premier League over here. And to say back in Northern Ireland now that the teams are doing well in Europe, and there's a lot of full-time clubs developing around here. So that's something that, listen, I was probably a manager's nightmare whenever I was a player because I played in the age, and I know it myself that I probably wasn't easy managed, but now I probably the shoes in the other foot, and I've got to manage some of them players now, and it's not easy.
So Ivan, we're just going to move on to I asked you to pick your all-time 11 of teammates that you played with. I mean, how difficult was that for you?
Real difficult, real difficult, and there'll be a few unhappy campers here. And kind of we think about it today, and like I said to you about earlier on, I squirmed out of that one about the best player played with Hibs. But I suppose I have to put out together a best 11 here, and I think for me, I probably would end up going for, just because it'll suit the system, not that you want to play it now, just the traditional 4-4-2. And the best keeper I probably throughout my career played with was a lad, Adriano Basso. He was a Brazilian, and he done nets for my Bristol City side. And he was the one that, again, had some good keepers at Hibs as well, but it probably was, truth be told, it was probably the one area in all my time at Hibs, it was the one area I probably we never really got right. and it's here. Graham Stack, the last time I was there, was a strong keeper, but I felt this was always maybe somewhat a weak point. Adriano Basso for me, 4 years at Bristol, was an ever present, and he used to call him the cat. So he starts in number one. He played in the playoff final with me and stuff, and a real top pro and a real good guy with it. And that year that we got to the playoff final, we didn't believe we were good enough to do it, to get to the top of the championship. He sat in the change room every week and says we were. So that kind of mentality was something that I really enjoyed from him and liked from him. So he does nets. Two centre halves. I think the first one I can't go by. My big cup winning captain is Rob Jones. Just an out and out winner, commander, centre half. Real strong presence, and someone that again had a good rapport in the changing room. He was similar to myself. He didn't like losing, and he's someone that you certainly need in your team. So Big Rob goes on there centre half. Other centre half would be another lad from Bristol City, Lewis Carey. Again, I could put Northern Ireland, Johnny Evans on there, Aaron Hughes, but I'd rather stick with my club teams because they were the boys you played with most. So I say Lewis Carey was a record attendance holder, appearance holder for Bristol City. He was my captain as well, so he was a captain of Bristol. Rob was a captain of Hibs, so that's the two skippers I've got on their centre half. Get on the right back now, and this is a tough one because I kind of split between Hibs and Bristol City. I played with a lad, Bradley Orr, at Bristol City, and Bradley went on to play in the Premier League with QPR and stuff. Great fullback, played the length of my time at right back, but I have to give it to Stephen Whittaker. Me and Whittaker had an unbelievable relationship as a right winger and a right back. So Whittaker goes on at right back, and you only have to look at the career he went on to have. Throughout Scotland with Rangers and down in England. So he slots in at right back. Left back, difficult position as well because I've had so many good ones. I've had Lewis Stevenson play left back, but Lewis obviously plays midfield as well. And then I had probably, to be honest, it's between again a Bristol or a Hibs man, Jimmy McAllister. As a Scottish lad, actually come down from Livingston to Bristol City, an absolute warrior. And then David Murphy, who was a quality left back. But the lad McAllister, he gets it for me. He went on, he played ever present for Bristol City. Never really went below a 7 or 8 out of 10. And probably suits my style. He was a very aggressive left back and liked to get forward. So unfortunately, Murph misses out. So it's a big shout to Paul Murphy.
That's a big shout.
So it's a big back four. As I say, we put Stephen Whittaker right back, and Lewis Carey centre half, and then Rob Jones and Jimmy McAllister. So there's two Hibs, there's two Bristol City. Moving on into the midfield two, the two centre ones. And that's probably one of the hardest places to pick people out, because as I said, I've had Lee Johnson, I had Marvin Elliott, and I had Nick Carroll, an Australian international, a lot of real good centre midfielders. But my Hibs days, we were blessed with so many. I think the first one that has to go on there, you can't look by him, Scott Brown. He walks into any team for me. Scott's in there for his energy, his enthusiasm. He's been on to captain Celtic for years, unbelievably. He was somebody that was a real talisman for Hibs, and someone again that would just bring that spark to your side. And he showed on the really top level that he was able to do it. So he goes in there as a centre midfielder. The next one's probably going to be one of the hardest as well, because you'll be looking for somebody to complement them, and Brownie's complement, man, was probably at the start of his career was Kevin Thompson, an absolute gift of a player, wand of a left foot. Went on to have a great career as well. But just for me, I think the nicest technical football that I ever played as a centre midfielder was Game Boozlin. And again, Boozy might have taken Boozy might have took the nut off me, but we had a real we had a good relationship. Whenever there was drink involved, it wasn't good, but it was you used to watch him just in the change room with a ball. You just thought the ball was part of him. So he would compliment. Scott could run around and do the energy for him, and he could just put his foot in the ball and play with his left foot, his right foot, his head, his knee, his elbow, whatever he wanted to play with, he could play with. So he would go in there and play in the centre midfield. So that's Brownie and Boozy. Out the left again, probably you think about how you can balance it out. I had Stephen Fletcher that come through. He wasn't really a left winger, but I'm going to have to put players in here. So out the left, we'll probably have to decide to go for either Derek Reardon or Stephen Fletcher. Two players with absolute talent. And again, Fletch was a younger boy coming through, and Deeks was somebody at that time. I know he was playing more of a striker beside Gaz, but Tony Mowbray sometimes did shift him around. I ended up putting Deeks out the left. Just I know I mightn't get much of a work rate from him going back.
None.
Lazy. But as he used to say to me, "Don't worry, wee man, I can smoke it." And that's when he could smoke it. That meant he could have it from anywhere and have it go in. So as I said, I put Deeks out that left hand side for that reason. And I've often looked at the right wingers that that would have been around at that time, and probably whenever I played at Hibs, we never really had another out and out paced winger, if you know what I mean. But another technically very probably gifted player that we had at that time was Dean Shields. Dean probably didn't play maybe as much come near the tail end when I was going, but Dean was a very gifted player as well. Out the right, and another player that I used to really enjoy playing under was Zamama. A lot of players Zamama was. Again, played either in midfield, he played in the number 10 role, or he could play out the right. So that's probably a position that probably again would be a toss up between probably them two, and then it's a difficult one. It really is, but I think I probably would go for my old countryman. I'd go for Dean Shields. I'd put him on there. He gives us that bite in that fight. And then up front, the two strikers. I was blessed to play with some great strikers at Hibs. The first one I'd put on there would be Big Gas. Don't you worry, wee man. I'll score goals.
Superb.
So he was a powerful boy as a youngster when I went across, and he took his move to Locomotive, and he was brave enough to go and do that, and Gary, for whatever people write about him, whatever people say about him, he's a heart of gold. He loved Hibs. He was a fantastic striker. He was, left foot, right foot, in the air. He was good. You can't deny he got his move at that time to Locomotive because he was a real top player in Scotland. So he goes on there. And then another striker up front would probably be one of my good friends as well, is Lee Trundle down at Bristol City. So we've got so many goals in that team, and what Lee Trundle would bring to the game is a bit what Boozy brings. I went down to Bristol City and I signed for them, and this boy Lee Trundle landed, and I'll never forget he landed. And the story goes he'd come in. I think it was a Bentley he had at that time. He was the first £1 million player at Bristol City, and he was it used to be Soccer AM showboat man, but what that man couldn't do with football just couldn't be done. And technically very, very good. Probably the most skillful player I've ever played with and seen. So strong. And you says to me earlier on in your interview, you used to, I don't know how I done it, but I used to entertain you. I would pay my money to go and watch him because he entertained me. And in fact, all the shirts that I've got around here, I think, and my room here, Scott Brown's up on the wall and Lee Trundle's up on the wall. That's the two players up on the wall, so they must have been bad when they're on the wall.
Brilliant. Ivan, do you think you'd get a game for that team? Do you think you'd be good enough?
I think probably I'll come off the bench again.
Yeah.
I think I'll let them do the hard work, and then when they're struggling, I'd have to come on and do a bit of the hard work off there. As I say, listen, so many good players that I played with. You know, I mentioned players: David Murphy, you know, Ian Murray, Gary Caldwell, Kevin Thompson. There'll be somebody I'll miss here. You know what I mean? You know, Kevin Thompson. You know, Chris Kiln was there at a time for Hibs with me. You know, Deeks, Sammy Morrow, Stephen Glass, Gary Smith. There was so many top players. Chris Hogg, uh, that's it's Zamama, Benji. You know, them was all really really good players. And at Bristol City, you have to remember we got to the playoff final, which was no mean feat. And we're a team in the championship that were there in the top 10 every year. And you know, you see how Bristol City now with all their millions are struggling to do that now. Whereas we were probably, you know, the smaller end of the spending power at that time, but we were very very competitive. So that's what made it a wee bit hard for me to pick a side tonight, because I've picked the best 11, but believe you me, you know, there was a lot of other good players I've left out. David Clarkson come down from Scotland from Motherwell to play with Bristol City. Nicky Maynard, lad went to West Ham, you know, played with me for seasons. So listen, I'll be getting messages after that saying, hey, listen, you're having a laugh. You've left me out by the way, but I'll be so blessed. Listen, I always feel as if I was the one that, not the lesser, but I always feel all these people that I mentioned, you know, were real top players. And I'm not disrespecting myself. I was in awe of some of all these players. Uh, you know, and so grateful they've been given the chance by Hibernian and Bristol City, even Ross County, some of the players up there to be able to play with them and be class myself as a professional. Was an absolute pleasure. And as I said, to all them players, you know, I thank them all because they made my career what it is now. This is my wee room here now with my shirts and my caps and my memories and mementos and things like that. And I can always look back at them. But again, the one thing I will say is that's the badge that'll always be on now, and will do with me and my kids for the future. And I'm happy through and through. All that some of the people always say is a bit of blue nose blood on you. It's not there anymore. It's full
Good.
Hibernian. And as I said, as soon as this crazy COVID's down and over with and things can return to normal, I'll be the first man back on that terrace, and maybe me and you can meet up and go for that pint, and as I said, hopefully cheer the next uh, Hibs team on to, you know, next thing of glory.
This is recorded, Ivan, so I get to hold you to that point, so you can't go back on it now.
You're buying right enough. You're buying.
I just want to say I've taken up enough of your time, Ivan, but I just want to say before we go that, I mean, I can speak on behalf of a lot of Hibs fans at a similar age and, you know, older, younger, and you gave me some brilliant memories, and I just want to take this chance to thank you for that. You know, I absolutely loved watching you at Easter Road, and you're someone that gave their all every time you represented Hibs, and you know, not every player does that. So you know, it's an underrated quality to have, and I just wanted to thank you for that. Sorry, before we go.
No, listen, as I said, my last message for all the fans and to yourself, and I thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight. And hopefully, as I said, there's Hubs fans on here watching. And sometimes, you know, when you move clubs and you move on and you don't get back as much as you would hope to, but it was a blessing, pleasure to me. As I said, you're saying to me about giving your all. That's all any player should do. And especially when you get to play for the likes of Hibernian, the supporters they're fanatical. They follow the club. They would give the club their last penny. And for me to do it, as I always say, once was a pleasure, but this was the 140 whatever times you mentioned there was an absolute dream. With some magic memories, with some difficult memories, but listen, that's all part of being a football club. And I think the the biggest thing for me is when you walk away from a club and you still get that attachment, and every time you see them in the TV and you feel that pain now. Now that I'm not a player, I'm a supporter. I feel the pain when they're beat now, like you probably feel the pain. And let's just hope that someday when we're having that pint, we felt the joy at Easter Road. We walk up Leith or wherever we go, we share that pint, and as friends and as football people, that's what it's all about. It's about having that joy and about having that, you know, that camaraderie, and that's something that Hibs have got. They're a big family, and they'll always be part of mine.
Brilliant, Ivan. Well, I'll let you get away. And again, thanks very much for giving me your time. And I'll see you for that
No
pint.
problem.
All right.
I'll see. Maybe a chaser.
Cheers, Ivan. Thanks very
All right.
much.
Take care, buddy. Bye bye.
Top man.